Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you are here, you must be here to talk about books because that's why I'm here, to talk about some books. Today I will be doing my November wrap-up. Oh my goodness, it's December. What the heck? Not prepared for that. I am prepared for Christmas. I've got my Christmas shopping done for the most part, so that's done, but still, can't believe it's the end of the year already. So for November, I kind of did a backtrack in what I read because even though there are so many books that I wanted to finish before the end of the year, I did realize I had quite the backlog of books that I needed to review. And so I decided to go ahead and pick up the books that I needed to review. That way my reviews could be submitted and we could move on. I do this a lot, you know, it has a lot to do with my executive dysfunction. It has a lot to do with my ADHD. I'll get in the mood to just tackle all of the review requests or none of the review requests. And it's not intentional at all. It's just, that's what my brain does sometimes. And I get overwhelmed sometimes whenever I see that there's too many. So then I just don't read any of them. But that's executive dysfunction for you. And so I backtracked a little bit and read books that I meant to review quite a while ago and then just never got around to doing it. So I read 9 books in November. Wah, wah, wah. I did get really busy in November, especially the last few weeks or the last couple of weeks, because I was not anticipating having company at my house for as long as I did. I had someone at my house like every day. And not that I mind that. It's so nice to be able to do that again, but it did hinder my reading time quite a bit. So of the books I read, 4 of them were fantasy, 2 of them were horror, 2 of them were mystery, and 1 of them was a romance. Now for this, I have been recording for a little bit and I'm being lazy, guys. I don't want to continue to make my room a mess, so I'm going to be putting up images for these, but I will tell you if it was an audiobook or a physical book that I read. So the first book that I read would be Sistersong by Lucy Holland. I loved this book. Now, I did have a few issues with the book at first because I didn't know going into it that we were going to be given a book that demonized Christianity. And so it hit a little different than what I thought it was going to at first. And then as the story progressed, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. This book I gave 5 stars. And I have a full review of this book coming. So that's all I'm going to say for now. But I will link the review whenever I get that posted. Next, I read my book of the month pick for whatever month it was that this book came. And that would be Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. So I didn't know what to expect going into this, but it's not what I got. This is a book about a man and a woman who are on the brink of divorce, pretty much. And their counselor tells them to take a trip to reconnect. And so that's what they do, and they end up in this tiny little church that's supposed to be a weekend getaway that the wife won. And when they get there, things start going wrong from the very start. And it gets twisty and turny. There's no way you can see all of the plot devices coming. They just, whoa. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book, and the reason it's called Rock, Paper, Scissors is actually kind of interesting because it's based on a book that the husband wrote, or a screenplay that the husband wrote, and it never got introduced into the world. However, it might have something to do with the plot of this book. And I found it highly, highly entertaining. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I picked up was another of my Book of the Month reads, and that would be The X Hex by Erin Sterling. I kind of hated this book, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. So when I pick up a book that says paranormal romance, I'm expecting the paranormal to come first. I'm expecting a bit of a magic system. I'm expecting some lore. I'm expecting to be like tossed into this world that's almost urban fantasy, maybe not so in depth, but it hits on all of those urban fantasy notes. However, there is a heavy emphasis on the romance. This is a pure romance book. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to get a paranormal romance if that's the way you think of paranormal romance. It focuses almost solely on the romance, leaving all of the paranormal elements kind of to the wayside. They're not developed. They have a few plot holes in the book because it's not developed, and the characters are so cookie cutter and just boring as heck. And I did not like it at all. I gave it 2 stars because the writing style is good. It's interesting. I finished this book even though I didn't like it. And so I would be very, very interested to pick up something else by this author because I do like the writing style quite a bit. And if you didn't know, Erin Sterling is Rachel Hawkins' pen name. Next, I picked up a book that my husband picked for my end of the year TBR, and that would be A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. It is the first in the Charlotte Holmes series. I was not anticipating this book kind of being a dark academia, and that's totally what it turned into, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed the whole dark academia setting. Really loved the lore that came from Sherlock and Watson. This was cool. This was a cool premise, a really cool book to read, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I gave it 4 stars because I do think that Brittany Cavallaro's writing leans a little young, but other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So much. I'm going to be continuing with this series. I think it's cute. So the next book that I read would also be from the books that my husband chose for my end of the year TBR, and that would be My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Now, this, again, was another fun read. It's dark. It's really dark, which I guess My Best Friend's Exorcism, you expect it to be a little dark, but this is even dark for Grady Hendrix. So I did feel like this had more horror elements to it than most Grady Hendrix books. I've only read Southern Book Club, but from hearing what other people say about his books, he does a lot of social commentary in a horror setting. But I really, really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. Again, this was just a fun ride. I liked the characters, but oh my gosh, the whole possession element of this story was fantastically executed. And it made some of the moments like super, super creepy. And there is a scene in that animal cruelty. So if that is a trigger for you, don't read this book, because I got to that and I was like, oh no, oh no, I don't like this. And usually for me, I don't have too many triggers with whatever I'm reading, but that moment did get to me. So if that is a problem for you, please don't read this book. It's not a scene that you can skip either, because you got to know what's going on to figure out what's going on in the end. And then the final book that I picked up for my husband's books that he picked for the end of the year TBR, Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I didn't like this book, guys. I thought it was cheesy. I thought it was boring. I hate saying this about a very well-loved Brandon Sanderson book, because Brandon Sanderson, he is a good writer. There are some books of his that I connect with and some I just don't. And this was one I just don't. And I hate that I don't love this book, because so many people love this book. So let's get into what I didn't like about it. I really didn't care for the magic system. Everybody always says how this magic system is so interesting. And I said this in Discord because they talk about exchanging breaths. And I don't know if this is from me watching like mermaid stories growing up, or, you know, reading paranormal romance or urban fantasy for so long. I just imagined everybody making out. That's not the way it's written. That's not the way that it's told. It's not even the description that is given when they start talking about exchanging breath. But I'm like picturing these people mouth to mouth exchanging breath, and it got to me. It really, really got to me. And then, you know, the whole romance part of it, I didn't enjoy. I thought it was cheesy. And this would have been a great opportunity for enemies to lovers. And even in enemies to lovers, that was sweetly done. But no, this was fluffy. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for the situation that she was in. No, it doesn't make sense. And I can't handle it. And then again, harkening back to the magic system, chromaturgy, it's been done. It's not original, which is kind of what Sanderson is known for, is groundbreaking original magic systems. And it's just not. It's not. I could have possibly been bothered by the fact that everybody talks about how great Brandon Sanderson's magic systems are, and then to come across chromaturgy knowing that everybody shuns Lightbringer, which happens to be one of my favorite series. And so there could be some resentment for me not liking this particular part of Warbreaker, but I don't know what to say about that. Now, there are some characters that I did thoroughly enjoy. Lightsong definitely being one of those characters. I really enjoyed figuring out his backstory. I really enjoyed figuring out what all was going on with him and his world. And then I liked the sister that got left behind. I'm horrible with names, you guys know this, but I really liked her as she started to come into her own throughout the course of the story. But the rest of them, I just didn't care. I didn't care. And, you know, I have to give Sanderson kudos for his writing style. I always really like his writing style. So this did come in at a 3-star, even though I didn't care for a good majority of it, because there were things that I liked. Character-wise, writing-wise, things like that. It just, as a whole, it did not work for me. Okay, now for one of my NetGalley audio books that I got for review that didn't read early enough, that I should have probably read a lot sooner. I read Slewfoot, or listened to Slewfoot from Brom, and oh my gosh. Oh, it was so good. So good. You guys know how I feel about stories about witchcraft. And this is purely a story about witchcraft and fae characters. Oh, the fae. Even if you don't call them the fae, we know what they are. We know what they are. Nature spirits. We know what they are. But tying fae type creatures and witchcraft together, and Brom's beautiful writing style, this book was so good. So good. It's probably going to make one of my top 10 books of the year. I'm going to struggle with my top 10, guys. I'm going to struggle because I have read some good books this year, and this is another 5-star for me. Next, from NetGalley again, I got the audio for Gilded by Marissa Meyer. Let me say, I really enjoy Melissa Meyer's writing. She's probably one of my favorite YA authors out there. The Lunar Chronicles, absolutely loved. Heartless, absolutely loved. And when I heard that Marissa Meyer was doing a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, I was so pumped. Oh, however, I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I did not like this book, guys. I did not like it. So one of the things that I always really love about Marissa Meyer is she's great at exploring lore. I love how deeply she delves into the lore of her stories. And she didn't do that too much in this book, and there was a lot of lore to explore, because not only did she have Rumpelstiltskin, she tied in the Wild Hunt and some Russian folklore elements as well, and they fell to the wayside, and I was so disappointed because this is a 500-page book. There should have been so much to explore, but what did it do? It focused on the romance between the Rumpelstiltskin character and our main character, and all of that fell to the wayside. So the story was not well developed. It was hardly there, and as far as plot goes, it has a decent plot with her battle with the fae leader, the Earl King, but there was so much I wanted out of this book that it just didn't deliver. And as much as I love Marissa Meyer's previous works, I couldn't get into this book. I did end up finishing it, but at the point that I didn't care what I was reading. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And so yes, 2 stars. Moving on. So the final book that I read in November, I finished on the 30th. Sat down and read that sucker. Would be Paladin Unbound by Jeffery Speight. So this book, he had contacted me on Twitter, asked me if I would review the book. I told him that I was in a backlog, that I wasn't going to get around to reading it anytime soon. We remained friends on Twitter. We talked a little bit. We've just had a little bit of a back and forth, like, And I realized he was actually a super sweet guy, and I bought the book. I bought the book because I wanted to support him. He's super nice, always willing to support the people in the fantasy community, and just wanted to throw my love at him because he throws his love for bloggers and authors all over Twitter, and just wanted to return the favor. Now, this book is very interesting because this book ties fantasy, horror, vampires, half orcs. We get a full D&D campaign in this novel. I did know that going into it, and I do know that D&D campaign type books aren't my favorite. They're just not. They're not my favorite. But this book features a half-orc character. I can't tell you exactly what he is because that's spoilery, but he is a hero among heroes. He is a good guy for the sake of good, and that is so rare to find in fantasy nowadays that it was just kind of like a breath of fresh air reading this story about Umhra the Peacebreaker, and I absolutely adored his characterization. Now, this book is also fairly dialogue heavy, so if you don't like that, maybe it's not for you, but he builds such a great world and through many different lenses, and I adored that aspect of it as well. There are characters to love. There are characters that you might be a little meh about, but there are definitely characters to love, Umhra being one of them, Shadow being another. And I really love the way that even though we get this D&D campaign type setup, like we get involved in the characters' lives and get to feel for them as they go through these journeys and these campaigns. And it was fun. It was such a fun book. I did give it 3.5 for the issues that I said before, but for what it was, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I do think if you like those D&D style campaign books, you will definitely really like Paladin Unbound. And I really think you'll like Umhra because it's so different to read a book nowadays with a character that is good just because they want to be good. There's no underlying gray elements to muddle through. All right, that is it for me today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!